Hello and welcome to another Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective that you can use to help save American liberty and independence. Today we have two action items for you, so please stay tuned. The Singapore summit that hosted North Korea and President Trump last week was indeed an historic event. The establishment war machine seemed to come to a screeching halt with talks of peace and denuclearization. Wait, exactly what is to be denuclearized? Trump said in his press conference afterwards that Chairman Kim and I just signed a joint statement in which he reaffirms his unwavering commitment to complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Folks, just so we're all on the same page, let's recognize that the Korean peninsula is both North and South Korea. So we have to ask, from a standpoint of sovereignty, how can the U.S. guarantee anything for the peninsula? At the very least, shouldn't South Korea have been at the table as a signatory? But then, let's remember that Korea, North and South Korea, are still at war, but merely operate under a signed truce. And let's also remember that the truce was signed by the U.S. representing United Nations Command and North Korea representing both the Korean People's Army and the Chinese People's Volunteer Army. Did you catch that? The U.S. operated under the command of the United Nations, and North Korea had the support of Communist China. To give you a little bit of background, we wrote about the Korean War in the August 1980 issue of the JBS Bulletin. We said, "This staged, managed conflict was fought under the direction of the United Nations, and it was ostensibly a war fought against an aggressive communist state, North Korea. We have used advisedly the word ostensibly to describe any real UN effort against North Korea. Whereas UN troops fought without restraint to destroy the anti-communist government of Katanga in the 60s, American soldiers marshaled for the first time under an alien flag, serving under the direction of one of the greatest military leaders in history, General Douglas MacArthur, were not allowed to defeat a communist enemy in Korea in the 50s. Every strategic decision made by MacArthur's command was relayed by the communists in UN headquarters directly to the Red insurgents from the North. Every effort to achieve victory was blocked by unprecedented restrictions placed upon this UN force both by the United Nations and by the Truman administration in Washington, D.C. A few paragraphs into it, we say, "Indeed, after MacArthur's brilliantly conceived and flawlessly executed landing at Incheon, the war against the North Koreans had been won for all intents and purposes. It was only the entry then into the war of vast hordes of red communist Chinese soldiers swarming across the Yalu that prolonged the warfare. The Red Chinese Military Command subsequently admitted that they would not have dared to commit their soldiers against MacArthur's forces had they not already received assurances that Washington would restrain MacArthur and thereby prevent any retaliation against either their lines of supply or communication." So since the signing of the truce in 1953, American troops have been stationed there waiting to be pulled back into action if the need arises. According to Trump, the U.S. currently has 32,000 soldiers in South Korea. Their main mission is to support the United Nations Command and Combined Forces Command. As we summarized in 1980, one of the essential prerequisites of sovereignty, of course, is a nation's ability to make war and defend itself against its enemies. Once any nation has relinquished its weaponry and defensive capability to an outside governmental entity, that country has lost the ability to make effectively its own national decisions. it is at the mercy of the now superior body to which it has surrendered. Such a nation, if a disarmed people, can no longer be so termed, no longer possesses any real sovereignty. It can be argued most persuasively, therefore, that the disarmament of any country is the single most crucial event in that nation's loss of sovereignty. Rather disgusting, isn't it, people? Now this brings us back to nuclear disarmament. Very few people would say otherwise of the importance of North Korea to be denuked. But at what price are we willing to pay? The U.S. has already given up significant sovereignty to willingly participate in the United Nations. If both sides of Korea have nukes, then why is there a need to have American troops in South Korea? Oh wait, South Korea was pressured by the U.S. and Canada to ratify the Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1975 that, according to the Washington Post, forced it to drop its program of creating nuclear weapons. Although the Post also says in the same article that South Korea may have secretly worked on a program over the years and could be ready to have them in about 18 months or so. But at this point, let's reiterate that one of the essential prerequisites of sovereignty is a nation's ability to make war and defend itself against its enemies, and that once any nation has relinquished its weaponry and defensive capability to an outside governmental entity, that country has indeed lost the ability to make effectively its own national decisions. And indeed, it is at the mercy of the now superior body to which it has surrendered. So South Korea relies on the United Nations for its defense, although it has one of the largest militaries in the world. North Korea has nearly double the amount of active military troops than South Korea. And North Korea's ally, China, has more than 1.5 times the number of active military than the U.S. So any kind of war on the Korean Peninsula will be long, drawn out, and very costly. And for those New World Order planners that are building world government through the United Nations, a war would be the perfect time to add even more illegitimate power to an already illegitimate organization that we have been sucked into. So perhaps the focus shouldn't be on getting the nukes off of the Korean Peninsula. Rather, it should be to get us out of the United Nations to reclaim our sovereignty, the sovereignty of other countries, and to watch the house of cards as built by Alger Hiss fall into the dustbin of history. And there's only been one organization that has been educating for 60 years on the atrocities of the UN and building up support to get out of the UN. And that organization is the John Birch Society. So, action item number 1. Contact President Trump and Congress to support H.R. 193 to get us out of the UN, and ask your senators to introduce a companion bill in the Senate. A link for contact information and a pre-written email is available in the video description. And action item number 2, join the John Birch Society today at jbs.org. So until next time, we'll see you then.